like SpongeBob has a little bit of the artistry, right? Like he's the one, producing and making the Krabby Patties as they are, right? And Squidward is this, the more mechanized component, right? Like his alienation is clearly stronger, because he's just, really the midway between the accountant. But no, it was pretty cute. I liked a lot. I love a good harsh treatment of the boss. I love their march on the boss and that shot of like the doors opening with them looking at him. That made me smile in a very knowing way.
One thing that I think about is how Mr. Krabs was charging both SpongeBob and Squidward to be able to do their jobs. And that for me reminds me of a phenomenon that I think I saw in DC and New York, which is interns paying to be able to do their own internship. It almost feels like a form of comedy, because even if you have an internship, you're still performing valuable labor, and that you should be getting compensated for it.
So the first thing I saw is like devaluing the kind of work that has to get done for business to run, but then also like using passions against a person as a way to justify exploiting them, right? And so like this isn't exactly the same, but you'll see this a lot in universities, especially with adjuncts, that you love teaching and you love working with students, so let me give you another class, and then let me give you a class on top of that, and you're not paid by class unless you're an adjunct, but like you just get, like for tenure earning faculty, you just get your sum, and they'll just sort of add on, and with adjuncts, they'll do the same thing, and you get paid, but it's like $2,000 for labor that's just wild. And so it felt very real.
Sometimes a company will want to give you, something, in negotiations, they're trying to make you give up something more valuable, in this case, the dental plan, while giving you something that may be exciting momentarily, but not have as much value. In this case, it was the keg of beer per meeting. Workers
tend to be judged by their enemies rather than the results when you're in that sort of conflict. And so it was definitely, especially at the beginning in the beer hall, like it was very much like you're with us or against us. And that's how Smithers understood Homer. He only knew Homer as somebody who was the enemy. If Homer was like backing him up, he wouldn't have, and it really demonstrates the way that like every sort of commodity fights for itself. Power fights for power.
The cynicism that goes along with a lot of unionism, especially at the higher levels, the fight for position and power in an organization, all absolutely true and relevant. And then we get the later clip when they finally are on strike as a result of this, and we get like an amazingly, really beautiful scene, especially in reflecting the boss. So, right, like we can run this plant together is always a great line, right? Like we don't need your employees, we can do it ourselves. And then of course the hiring of the scabs, in this case of the hyper 100% loyal robots that inevitably turn on them as well. Just so wonderful and glorious. But yeah, peak Burns, and then at the very end, right, like you have a great end of the episode where you do get a very great display of solidarity, and it just goes to show that like that the heart that was in the early time Simpsons, right? Like there is a sense that like this could be an actual family, and Lisa's sincerity and their desire to want to get this and coming together and finally singing at the last moment when Burns literally transitions into the very Grinch, right? Like looking over and is the Grinch. Selfishness, the taking, the hatred at the joy of other people.
And then when they call it, his bluff, you find out that The power was us all along.
Smithers, I'm beginning to think that Homer Simpson was not the brilliant tactician I thought he was.
Everything that comes in here belongs to the agency.
You mean you?
As long as you still work here.
It makes me think about how much people will sacrifice their lives, their relationships, their giving of themselves for a company that doesn't necessarily care about them.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's implied that you have to be here. If I wasn't here, then what would have been the repercussions have been? And you know, and a lot of times, you know, while you're technically allowed to do something, do the right thing, if you're not doing what makes the boss happy, you get retaliated against. And I think that that's a very common theme of that show, you know, very, very much where you'll have someone else who takes the credit for all your work. You know, they're getting rich, they're getting notoriety, but it's off of somebody else's back where, oh, you should be happy you have a job.
Capitalism is a social relationship mediated by product. And I think that it was really interesting too, if you look at the gender dynamic of what's happening there.
And you should be thanking me every morning when you wake up, along with Jesus, for giving you another day. Oh, come on. I'm sorry about your boyfriend, okay?
Because like, he could have just been her coworker, not her boss. And like it would have played out the same exact way, given the time period. And I mean, maybe not even the time period, but what you see here is that the product, the product, and here it's the ideas. It epitomizes a model of social life, right? Like, so in form as in content, the product is a justification for the conditions of the existing system. Like, if we want to have these ideas, like the only way these ideas happen is if you're in this particular kind of situation. In a capitalist system, we are what we consume, and we are what we buy, and we are what we produce. They are increasingly and strategically being removed from the things that allow them to produce and allow them to consume. And they're saying you can only consume these things, and you can only be what you produce, but we're also not letting you have that. So who are you? You're just a worker. Which is why the sign scene was so powerful, because she literally took something in the factory and repurposed it and made it something. And that is the moment that like her life became her own creation. And people shutting off of the things, you know, are cutting themselves off from this life that keeps them from, you know, the sort of products.
She was there standing what she believed in. She knew that there would possibly be or that there was going to be consequences to what she was doing, but she still did what was right because it was the right thing to do. And it's so rare that you see that, people doing the right thing because it's the right thing.